Hello girls and squirrels, happy Wednesday and welcome back to my channel.
Hi, I'm Christina Sherilyn and I'm a vintage reseller, which means I rummage through people's unwanted items and find the most amazing vintage pieces to give them a second chance. I love styling up vintage clothing in a modern way, investigating the history of each piece, and most of all, I love the treasure hunt. So follow along on my journey and let's see what we can find.
So you guys already know what time it is. It is time for my fall and winter 2020-2021 fashion trend report. I like to do these a couple months in advance just so you guys can get a jump on the trends. So you can go ahead and start picking up these trends to stock in your Poshmark, Depop, Etsy, eBay, whatever stores you have, whatever platforms you sell on. You guys can go ahead and stock up on these items before everything gets picked over. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. There's a lot of trends I'm going to cover in this video, so get your notepads, take some notes, get a coffee, get a water, get a wine, whatever you want to do, your beverage of choice, and let's get started. So let's start with fashion aesthetics. Now, as Gen Z grows their army, fashion aesthetics are rising in popularity. A fashion aesthetic is basically taking how someone dresses and then categorizing it where it's like a big group of people. Like it's like a cult following basically. So like how us 90s kids had like scene and emo. Now it's e-girl, e-boy, punk, grunge revival, things like that, cottagecore. So first we're going to talk about some of the biggest fashion aesthetics going into fall and winter of 2020-2021. So the first one that has taken over everywhere is cottagecore. Now cottagecore is kind of what you think it is. It's hardcore cottage life, basically. So it's this aesthetic where it's very feminine, very dainty, but it's like you move to a cottage in a fairy woodland land and you're gardening and you're baking bread all day. That's basically what it is. So that is called cottagecore. It's also described as farmcore. Now farmcore is a little bit different than cottagecore. It's a little bit more country, a little more, I don't know if I want to say rugged, but it's just a tiny bit different than cottagecore, but they do kind of follow the same guidelines. And that brings us to what's called fairycore. Now fairycore is kind of like if a woodland nymph came to life. It's ruffles, it's tulle, it's corsets, it's petticoats. It's kind of like a Victorian take on cottagecore. Moving on to what is called academia. This is what seems to be the new hipster, basically, the new nerd. Academia comes in three forms. It comes in light academia, dark academia, and lazy academia. So light academia is just what it sounds like. It's whites, beiges, tans, khakis. It's lighter colors. Whereas dark academia is more your blacks, your navies, your emerald greens, your maroons, but it's all in the same style, just those two different color palettes. Now, lazy academia is where it does have the academia aesthetic, but like add a hoodie or add your favorite like college alumni sweatshirt and throw on some like combat boots with it too and call it a day. It's the new hipster basically. And that brings us to our last aesthetic that we're going to talk about, and that is e-boy and e-girl. Now this is a huge trend. It's basically the new age punk, emo scene, dare I say, although scene can never be replicated and probably shouldn't be. Rest in peace to our scene days and our scene hair. It was a good time to be alive. Anyway, so now we have e-boy and e-girl. Again, this is just like the new emo, basically. It's punk, it's grunge. So there's chains on everything. There's latex. The cage bras are coming back in style, all of that. So keep an eye out for all of those things. All right, so now that we've covered the main aesthetics, let's talk about the decades that are on trend. 40s silhouettes are actually coming back. It's a very like cinched waist. It's a very specific neckline. It's not necessarily the restrictions, it's just the silhouette, if that makes sense. So this is what a 40s silhouette looks like. Just be on the lookout for dresses like that. Next up, one of my favorites, 70s glam. Yes, I've been waiting for this day to arrive and it has finally come. Thank you, Sir Harry Styles, for bringing back 70s glam. We only have him to thank, if we're being honest. I'm just saying, he brought it back. 70s glam is like where it's at. It's where I want to shine. It's where I want to live. forever. 70s glam, think about Mick Jagger, Bowie, modern day Harry Styles. Just think about that. All the 70s rock stars, that's what it is. It's loud, it's obnoxious, it's disco, it's sequins, it's androgynous, it's beautiful. We love 70s glam. That brings us to the 80s. The 80s is not going anywhere. Big shoulders, shoulder pads, big puff sleeves, dramatic, kind of goes in with the 70s glam. It kind of ties into the glam rock of the 80s. Think about all that. Anything that's gaudy, it's on trend. And last decade on our list is the 90s. Are we surprised? No. The 90s have been on trend for a couple years now, but during this time, it's specifically the grunge and punk side of 90s fashion. So when you come across those grunge pieces from the 90s, definitely pick them up. All right, let's move on to colors. Here are a couple color charts of the Pantone colors of the season and the year. I will leave these up right here so you can go ahead and screenshot them if you want to pause the video. One of the main colors for fall and winter is going to be green. Like we saw in spring and summer of 2020 with the sage green, now we're moving into more fall and winter tone greens, but green is still definitely the color of the year. Earth tones is going to be another really popular color palette. Just like we saw a lot of beige in spring and summer, now we're seeing the more brown tones. And then even going into that kind of rust orange, and again with the green. Speaking of colors, one of the trends is color clashing. This means you've got one color as a shirt, one color as a jacket, and one color as your pants, and it just looks like a rainbow threw up on you. It's on trend. Color clashing is the new pattern mixing. Which brings us to prints. Of course, number one on the list is animal print. Animal print will always and forever be on trend for fall and winter. But for fall and winter 2020, the most popular animal prints will be leopard, zebra, and snakeskin print. Moving back to the grunge trend, we have check print. Now this is kind of an example of check print right here. It's very grunge, it's very 90s. It can come in small or large scale, but anything check print is definitely going to be on trend, following with that grunge aesthetic. Another print that is really big right now is paisley. This shows up a lot in prairie style dresses from the 70s and remakes of prairie style dresses. Moving on to pinstripes. Now pinstripe shows up a lot in pants, especially wide leg pants. For some reason, I always find pinstripes in a wide leg pant, and blazers. Pinstripes are very popular in suiting. That brings us to houndstooth, which a lot of times you will find again in blazers or suiting. You can usually find it in pants and a lot of times in coats as well. So another trend that we saw in spring and summer that's carrying over into fall and winter is tie-dye. Tie-dye doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Tie-dye really started making a comeback a couple years ago, and it has really taken over the fashion world, so keep on picking up that tie-dye. Now, of course, we couldn't talk about prints without talking about florals. There are three main florals that are going to be on trend this season. The first one is vintage florals. They're very romantic style florals, very reminiscent of the Victorian era. Then we have big, loud florals. These are giant floral patterns. We're not talking just your normal run-of-the-mill floral. We're talking giant flower print floral, like floral. And last but not least, we're gonna do the opposite with delicate florals, which is that tiny little micro floral print that you see on a lot of 90s tops and dresses. So with 90s being on trend, we were bound to have delicate florals thrown in the mix. All right, so let's move on to just the overall fashion trends. First on our list is leather. Now, leather has been making a big comeback for a couple years now, but this season it's going to be especially seen in suits and sets. So leather pants paired with a leather jacket. Now, they don't necessarily have to be the same color. Again, color clashing is the new pattern mixing. Now, speaking of colors, the leather trend is specific in earth tones. So again, going back to those brown brown tones, green, rust orange, colors like that. Now, another trend that we have to thank Sir Harry Styles for is the sweater vest. We're talking that 70s scoop neck sweater vest. And this also falls into the academia trend as well, but it's kind of like 70s academia. We saw them a lot this summer worn as tank tops, but now for fall and winter, obviously they're going to be more layered with a collared shirt underneath or a blouse underneath and a jacket on top. So keep an eye out for funky little sweater vests. Another huge trend that we saw in spring and summer that will carry over into fall and winter is Victorian. The big puff sleeves, the voluminous dresses or skirts, and the Victorian neckline. Usually these necklines are very lacy, they have a bow, they come up kind of like a mock neck, so just keep an eye out for things that resemble the Victorian era. Next trend on our list is cardigans. Cardigans usually make their way back on the scene every fall and winter, but this fall and winter you specifically want to look out for those big chunky knit grandpa cardigans. The more it looks like a grandpa would wear it, the better. Pick it up, they're on trend. Again, this goes back to the academia trend. It can also be styled as punk and grunge. So there's a wide variety of people looking for these specific cardigans. So moving on, what would fall and winter be without a little velvet? Again, this is kind of a nod to the 90s. Velvet skater dresses were all the rage in the 90s. Anything you can get your hands on that is velvet. Dresses, blazers, tops, pants. It goes both with the 70s glam trend and also the 90s grunge trend. So again, one of those things to just keep an eye out for. Another trend that we've been seeing a lot of and is not going anywhere anytime soon is lingerie as outerwear. I'm wearing an example of that today. This is a 1950s kind of like body shaper, but I have it on as a top with this flannel on top, and then I've got my plaid pants on that are way too tight, so if I bust out of them at any point in this video, mind your business. But anyways, lingerie, like I said, lingerie not going anywhere. For fall and winter, what it looks like is slip dresses over sweaters. There's just going to be a lot more layering. So definitely keep picking up that vintage lingerie. Another trend that really comes around every fall and winter is faux fur and shearling. Shearling is, it kind of looks like a little lamb. It's white, it's a little fuzzy. You see it on like denim jackets a lot. Keep picking those up. The 70s style jackets with the faux fur on those, pick that up. And just any faux fur that you see that's a pretty good quality, go ahead and pick it up. So that brings us to tapestry and carpet inspired jackets, pants, tops, things like this. So it basically looks like you took the fabric from your grandma's couch and made it a jacket. I've actually come across quite a few of these in the thrift store before, so they're not impossible to find. This is one of those trends where you're not just gonna find a whole bunch of them, but definitely keep an eye out for them because a lot of them are in a really cool pattern and they have that really cool just like 70s vibe to them. They also have like a very like bohemian kind of southwestern feel to them, so I'm actually really excited about this trend. So this trend was big last year and it's come back for a second season this year, and that is patchwork. Patchwork, you saw it in the 70s and then repeated again in the 90s, so I believe that's why it's come back into fashion. Patchwork can literally be found on any kind of garment, jacket, shirt, blazer, pants, boots. Patchwork has no bounds. And last trend on our list, I didn't put it in the aesthetics category because I wasn't sure if I should actually classify it as an aesthetic, but it is a trend and it's notable. And that is the androgynous trend. So with that 70s glam trend coming back and Harry Styles out there doing his dang thing, androgynous style was bound to make a comeback, and I'm so glad it did. I love androgynous style. I think it's awesome. Now is the time for you men to step up your style game. You cannot live on the same planet as Harry Styles and do what you're doing. Step it up. Now's the time. Also, can we get a unisex category on Poshmark? Thank you. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. Let's move on to our last category, which is shoes. So according to Vogue magazine, the only boot that matters this season is the knee-high boot. Knee-high boots are back. Next shoe on our list is Doc Marten style shoes. Chunky combat boots. Pick them up. Doc Martens always sell anyway, so obviously if you see a pair of Doc Martens, you better grab them, babies. I don't care what condition they're in. But also start picking up combat boots that are just that chunky, real punk style. Next boot on our list is the Chelsea boot, which I'm super excited about. I love me some Chelsea boots. Who doesn't love a good Chelsea boot? They're classic. They go with anything. So keeping up with the knee-high boots, we also have the thigh-high boots. Now, thigh-high boots, hard to come by. It's not impossible, but if you do see them and they're in good condition, pick them up. Another shoe style that's very on trend is the pointed toe. Pointed toe, like patchwork, has no limits. You can find it in a heel, you can find it in a boot, you can find it in a flat, you can find it in a mule. Pointed toe, pick it up. Another big trend is men's style shoes, like loafers. It's very Gucci. It's been on trend for a while. It's still on trend. Keep picking up the loafers. So of course we couldn't have a 70s glam comeback without platform boots, heels, all that. Platform? Yes, hunty. Did somebody say disco? I think they did. Pick up your platform shoes. Which brings us to our last shoe trend, which is the e-girl, e-boy version of platform shoes. They're calling it now flatforms, but when I was in high school, they were called creepers. So this is what they look like. They've got the big, thick platform sole. I think they're still called creepers, to be honest. Am I wrong? Now they're calling them flatforms, which I feel like is just offensive. They're creepers. If you're gonna lean into the creepy vibe, call them creepers. That's all I'm saying. Alrighty, so that does it for all of the fall and winter 2020-2021 fashion trends. I hope you guys learned a little something today, and this helps you out with your sourcing for the upcoming seasons, and maybe even gave you some inspiration to spice up your own wardrobe this fall and winter. If you like this video, please be sure and give it a thumbs up on your way out. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join our family. We would love to have you. I put new videos out every Wednesday and Friday, and I will see you guys on Friday. Bye guys.